Hey, it's Matt Hoss Comedy here, and today, here are my 11 tips on how to apply successfully for a stand-up comedy gig. You probably clicked on this link because you want to know more about how to get more gigs, how to apply to a promoter and be booked by them for stand-up comedy gigs. It's really hard to get booked for shows. It's not the easiest thing in the world, and it can feel very disheartening when we apply for stuff and we don't get it. It's very much like a job hunt. It really is. It's the gig economy, isn't it? So it's very difficult to apply for stuff. So today's video is here to help you miss some of those things which really does add barriers and obstacles and small things which can maybe make you less endearing to the promoter. I'm here to help you get the highest chance of success of getting that fantastic email across to that promoter. Here are my 11 tips. So just a little bit about myself. I am a stand-up comedian. I've been for about 10 years or so. So I've seen a lot. I've been applying for a lot of gigs, and I've changed my tact through time. I've learned what I've done wrong, and I've learned how is the best way to communicate. There's no one right answer. You've got to do what's best for you. But the way I'm talking to you today is as a promoter, because in my past I've worked on loads of open mic shows in Kent. There's Toys in the Attic and lots of Kent gigs, but I am also now I work in professional shows now. I book for Funny Rabbit Comedy in Canterbury, but more so than that, I booked lots of professional gigs. I do lots of corporate events and stuff like that. So I get lots of bookings for other comedians to apply for my show, and I know what works for me. I see what I like in those things. Yeah, it might be a little bit personalised towards me, but I'm going to try and make it as generalised as possible so that you have the highest success in applying for a gig. Today's video is for open mic comedians, semi-professionals, and you know what, professional comedians. This also applies to you as well, because you know it's hard to get those gigs, especially when those higher paying gigs. So maybe here's a couple of tips for you as well, for as a promoter and as a professional promoter, what kind of things I'm looking for in an email. Tip number one, here is the core essential. Again, this is mostly for the open mic comedians, but this is the essentials that you do need to include when you are applying for a gig. So the key things that you need to include are: how long have you been gigging for? Roughly how many gigs have you done? What are your quotes and recommendations? Have you got any reviews that we can have a look at? What kind of gigs do you regularly play? Like, are you doing certain types of clubs? Are you comparing? Are you headlining? Are you opening? Have you just done a trial slot? What kind of slots have you been doing? We want to hear what regular other clubs are booking you. That's a really good indicator of whereabouts your level is right now. Because if you are doing opening 20s for, I don't know, for Glee, that says quite a lot. If you are headlining a bus stop in Croydon, that also says a lot. That was a very flippant joke, but if you are headlining an open mic gig, that's okay. Just don't pretend it's a professional gig. Make sure you send a video. Really important to send a video. You can include many of stuff, and we'll go through it in a second, but those are the core essentials. You need to include those 5 things. Number 2 is to make sure to update your links. Anywhere else you want to direct that promoter towards, please make sure they are updated. And I'm not a stickler for these kind of things. I'm not saying that, oh, you haven't updated your website in 2 months. Because some people can be a bit arsy about that. I don't care that much. But what is really important is that if I click on your link for your video and it's unavailable anymore, make sure that what you're sending is updated. It's a real big bugbear of mine when I click on a link and it takes me nowhere. And guess what? Those people don't get booked. And it's an easy thing to do. If you invest in that, people will invest in you. That links me to point number 3. It is absolutely okay to copy and paste. It's okay to copy and paste the main thread of the email. So your details about yourself, your videos and stuff like that. I have a document on my computer where it's called the sending email, where I copy and paste all the kind of relevant details, the details about what I do, the core stuff I mentioned earlier, the videos. I have certain different types of videos like comparing and like 20 minutes there and stuff like that. So whatever role that promoter wants to look for me for, that's where they can be directed to. However, a lot of people say, why copy and paste? Some people demand that you send them a personalized email every time. And I don't agree with that. But there is a big but there. I think it's okay to copy and paste the core stuff. However, please, for the love of whatever's good in the world, please, make sure you personalize the start. Say, use my name. If you know who's booking it, say, hello Matt, hope you're doing good. And if you know that promoter, you've worked with them before, say hello, make that conversation, you know. If you've worked for that promoter before and you send an email which kind of has that lack of warmth, or I don't know, like sometimes people email and be like, hi, I'm not sure if I've worked for you before, but here's the email. It's like, actually, we booked you 2 months ago. Like, like what's going on there? Even if you don't get the gig, it's good to have that kind of connection with that person. It's good to have that chat. Don't dismiss the promoter. Don't call them the wrong names. Don't make it so robotic. Tip 4, baby. It's pitch realistically. So whenever a promoter puts something out, it usually says like headliner, opening, compare, a middle spot, open spot. As I kind of mentioned earlier, make sure to know which one you are applying for. Sometimes people who have only done open spots are applying to be the headliner of a professional comedy club, expecting £300, and that is outrageous. You will do yourself zero favors if you do that, because A, you're not going to get a gig, B, that promoter's going to roll their eyes at you, and C, they'll probably dismiss you in the future. And also, promoters talk to each other. You know, they're not just a one-person team. They talk to other comedians. They talk to other, promoters. It's important that you don't piss them off. Don't oversell yourself, but also don't undersell yourself. Because I've had lots of people before who are definitely headliners applying for the opener slot, and I get that. And that's a valid move, but that's because opening, let's say, for example, is £150, and say headliner is £200. And if you're applying for both, and you're a headliner level, they're going to pick you to do the opening because they're getting you for cheaper. Try to have a conversation with that promoter as well. If they think you're not quite headliner level, that's fine. Then take the open slot. But then it's about kind of that communication, isn't it? Don't be too ambitious. Don't make the promoter roll your eyes at you. Tip number 5. You're not just applying for one gig. You're applying to that promoter. Here's the deal. It's very unlikely that you're going to get booked first time by that promoter. And that's okay, because if they see your name there for the first time, they'll be like, okay, I'll check out their videos and stuff like that. I'll see who this person is. They don't fit the bill this time, but, another time. You get shelved away for another date. Because sometimes people get disheartened when they don't get a reply or they get a rejection. And sometimes people get angry. And what I'm trying to say here is, don't get angry. Don't have a go at that person. Just have some foresight, because you're not just applying for that one gig. You're applying for that promoter. So what that means is that that promoter, if they see your name several times and they see you're improving, or they see lots of different things, they will likely come back to you, because if you're applying to a person over the times, your email is not ignored. They absolutely see that. But, and for reasons we'll talk about later on, they're probably a little bit busy. They don't have time to reply to you. Don't think it's gone to the void. They've taken it in. Trust that person has taken that in. Tip number 6, really short one. Don't expect a reply. Sometimes I get about 100 emails for one gig, and that's a lot of people to reply to. I don't really have that much free time. Some promoters do, and that's great, but I don't think many promoters have the free time to reply to everyone. That's maybe a little bit rude, and I totally get if there's any frustration there, but it's best to not expect a reply. I think the important thing is it's about expectation. You're only going to upset yourself if you're expecting that response. Tip number 7 is don't apply for slots that aren't going. So sometimes when I run Funny Rabbit gigs, right, I will get an email like about 2 months after the bookings had ended, being like, hey, can I do this gig? They haven't asked for a specific gig or a specific time, but they've emailed me saying, hey, can I have a slot? It's a bit of a shot in the dark, and actually I don't mind it as a concept. I'm always happy for people to get in touch with me and have a chat with me about stuff, but it's very unlikely I can offer you a gig off the back of that. And hey, it's okay. Again, I applaud the initiative and the accommodation to get in touch, but I think apply when they have gigs available, because that is when they are looking for a comedian to fill in that slot. And if you apply outside of it, it can be a little frustrating, because it can be like, just haven't had the time to deal with that, and it's it might come at the wrong time. Tip number 8 is apply through the means that they state. What that means is basically that sometimes you'll get a gig posting saying, hey, we've got this gig in Birmingham and it's X, Y, and Z slots, and could you please email me on this address with the subjects and stuff like that. Firstly, if someone asks you to use a certain subject header, please do. That is very helpful for the promoter. Don't just put Birmingham gig when that person's asked for like a certain thing, because that allows that promoter to filter through properly and to understand, because they might be running multiple gigs, and if you have 4 gigs and you have an email which is totally vague and doesn't help which one, that can be very confusing. Be clear, be concise. Use what they've asked for. So if that's for a subject line, pop that in. If they've asked to have it through email, please email them. Do not Facebook message them. Please, please, please don't Facebook message them. Very rarely do people ask for Facebook messages. And the reason for that, for example, if I've asked you to email, I'm looking on my email calendar for everyone who's applied. So when I'm sitting down to book that gig, I'm looking through every single email through there. If you Facebook message me, it's not what I've done. It starts me a bit irritated because you've gone against what I've asked for. To be fair, it's not the end of the world, and no one's ever that angry, but it's just a little bit frustrating. What it does, it puts up a barrier because it doesn't endear you to that promoter straight away, and B, you're less likely to get that gig, because if you've applied through Facebook, let's pretend Facebook's over here, you haven't got your email from where I'm booking from. So if I'm booking from here, you're not on that list. I have to remind myself that someone else has applied over here. Chances are, and this has happened, I've totally forgotten that you've applied because I've got this list in front of me, and there's loads of really great applicants there. Tip number 9, and this is the most controversial one. Realistically, we're only going to watch 1 minute of your video. Yep. I don't know. Maybe that's wrong of me. But again, if I've got 100 applicants applying for a gig, and everyone sent me a 10-minute video, no way am I watching that amount of time. I haven't got time for it. So what I'm trying to say is when you send in a video of your set, you've got to make sure that first minute is fucking phenomenal, because we're not necessarily looking for your whole set. We're looking for your vibe. We're looking for what kind of presence you have. And you can get a lot of that in the first minute. What kind of stuff you do, what is your stage persona and presence like, and what kind of material do you do? How do you deal with stuff? And that says a lot about a gig, because the gig that I run is it's got a specific need, it's quite alternative, it has a nice vibe around it. We're only going to watch 1 minute of your video. I'm really sorry, I wish we had more time, but yeah, make sure that minute is good. But what I do have to say is, on the flip side, don't just send a minute clip. Do send a whole club length set. If you are applying for a 20-minute set, send a 20-minute video, because there are some red flags that do pop up with that kind of stuff. Bonus tip for open mic comedians. You're probably wondering, okay, where do I even find gigs? Well, there's lots of comedy forums which you can look at. Some are definitely way worse than others. And but yeah, it's about finding the right gigs. 10. don't be arsey if you don't get it. This is very similar to the point I made earlier, but promoters aren't trying to be difficult. We have a lot to deal with, we have a lot of things to contend with, and unfortunately, we can't give you the gig every time. Genuinely, I don't mean this as a kind of sycophantic thing whatsoever. If I could book every single comedian all the time, I bloody well would, because they're great, and a lot of people are fantastic, and everyone who applies to me is, I would say 95% of the time, really good at what they do. There's just not enough space, and what that means is that there's going to be a lot of people disheartened when they don't get the gig. That doesn't say anything about you. That's not saying that your self-worth is diminished. You're still a fantastic comedian. You know, sometimes there might be issues with what you're sending, but hopefully, most of the time, there is no issues whatsoever. But there's an issue if you start being passive-aggressive towards that, promoter. And I've had to deal with this a few times where people, not necessarily passive-aggressive, but people think I've been upset with them because I haven't emailed them back, I haven't given them any gigs. That's never been a feeling from my end as a comedian and a promoter. And as a comedian, I totally understand that feeling, because like, why isn't that person booked me? What have I done to offend them? You know, what's going on? Oh, screw that person. But what I'm trying to say is deactivate that feeling, because that's not the reality of the situation. It's just one of those things, really. And again, if you're being passive-aggressive or you're sending agitating email back, that's not going to help the communication. And finally, tip number 11 is once you have been booked for that gig, because you will get booked, I know you will, it's once you finished that gig, again, network with the promoter on the night, tell them how much you enjoyed it, do a follow-up email, stuff like that. But also, on top of that, like, don't reapply for a while. Most professional gigs, open mic gigs are different, and I think that's okay. But if it's a professional gig, we've just paid you money to do your set, it's very unlikely that we want to reapply you for the same gig. If it's a different gig, then absolutely, by all means do it. But if it's that specific gig, it's usually not the same audience, but broadly the same audience, so we don't want you back straight away. We do want you back, but not straight away. Taking that time, maybe a year, maybe a 2 year, depending on how regularly that gig runs. Keep in touch, keep friendly with the promoter, and I'm sure you'll be flourish with gigs. Well, hopefully that's been helpful for you today. I've been Madhouse Comedy. If you felt that any of these tips have been helpful for you, please drop us a comment below. We'd love to hear what you think of it. Has it helped you? Would you like to know more about how to apply for gigs? We can really break it down further. These are just some ideas and tips and to move forward with that. But also, let us know how you feel. Do you agree with some of them? Do you disagree with them? And what are your tips on how to get that? We'd love to hear more. We've got loads more comedy videos coming up and helping you navigate the comedy industry. So make sure to like and subscribe. Share this with your friends. Share it onto comedy sites and networks. We'd love to grow this channel a little bit more. And the more that you like and subscribe these videos, the more I can able to do this and do more of these videos. So keep on liking, keep on subscribing, and keep on telling your friends. And if you like what I do, make sure to check out my Twitch, Madhouse Comedy, check out my Twitter, and why don't you check out my Patreon, Madhouse Comedy? Lots of cool bonus videos and podcasts on there for you too. I've been Madhouse, and we'll see you soon. I can't wait to see you at a gig near me soon. Don't apply for my gig. Bye. Imagine if I just finished. Don't apply for my gig, you prick. Alright, take care everyone. We'll see you soon. Bye.